The boarding gate is already crowded, voices overlapping, carry-on wheels clicking against polished floor. A calm, well-dressed passenger stands slightly aside from the rush. No urgency, no frustration, just quiet patience. At the counter, the gate agent checks the screen, then looks up, expression tightening. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step aside. There's been a change." The passenger doesn't react immediately. He simply blinks once, as if processing something unnecessary. Behind him, a white passenger is already being escorted forward, smiling faintly, speaking to staff like this was always arranged. A supervisor arrives. No eye contact, only procedure. "Your seat has been reassigned. You'll need to wait for the next available upgrade listing." A few people start watching, not loudly, just enough to notice something is off. The passenger finally speaks, voice steady. "Reassigned based on what?" No one answers directly, only rehearsed phrases, only systems. Only silence wrapped in authority. A security officer shifts closer, not aggressive but positioned, prepared. The man steps slightly back, not resisting, just observing, and for a moment the entire gate feels like it has quietly chosen a side without saying it out loud. They chose the wrong person, they just didn't know it yet. The boarding gate hums with controlled urgency. Passengers form uneven lines, some already impatient, others scrolling through phones as if distance from reality makes the wait shorter. Overhead screens blink with flight details that do not change fast enough for anyone's comfort. Near Gate 14, a man stands slightly apart from the flow. He is dressed simply but carefully, pressed shirt, neutral jacket, no visible brand logos. Nothing about him demands attention, and nothing about him asks for it. Yet the gate agents keep glancing at him. At first, it is subtle. The kind of glance staff give when they are checking a name they think they already confirmed. Then it becomes something else, slower, more deliberate, as if the answer they are finding does not match what they expected. A female gate agent taps her screen once. Then again, her expression tightens just slightly. She looks up. "Sir," she says, voice professional but lowered, "can you step aside for a moment?" The man does not move immediately, not out of defiance, out of observation. He studies her face first, then the counter, then the boarding queue behind him. Finally, he steps one pace to the side. "Is there an issue?" he asks. The agent hesitates, just a fraction too long to be routine. "I'm going to need you to wait briefly. There's been a seat adjustment." The phrase hangs in the air. Seat adjustment is not a phrase passengers usually hear at boarding. Not like this, not at this stage. Behind him, a second passenger is approached differently. That man, white, mid-40s, confident posture, does not stand in uncertainty. A different staff member is already speaking to him with a faint smile. His boarding pass is checked once, then immediately acknowledged with a nod. "Right this way, sir." No hesitation, no recalculation, no pause. He moves forward toward priority boarding. The contrast is small but unmistakable. The first man notices everything but reacts to nothing. At the counter, the supervisor arrives. Older, heavier voice, practiced authority. He does not look at the passenger for long. "Sir, we've had a system update," he says. "Your seat has been reassigned. We'll need to resolve this before you proceed." "Reassigned to whom?" the man asks calmly. The supervisor glances at the screen instead of answering. "That's not available at this moment." The words are careful, not wrong, just empty of detail. Behind them, boarding continues normally. Luggage wheels roll forward. A child laughs briefly before being shushed. Life continues as if nothing has changed. But near the gate counter, something has. The man's boarding pass is scanned again. A small pause follows. The machine beeps differently this time, not an alarm, not a denial, just a soft administrative delay. The gate agent frowns at her screen. "That's strange," she mutters under her breath. The supervisor steps closer. "Print the revised allocation." She types quickly, stops, types again. Then her expression changes, subtle discomfort, like reading a message she was not meant to see. A security officer now stands within a few steps, not aggressive, just present. Positioning matters more than words. The man notices him, Still, he does not raise his voice. "I have a confirmed seat," he says. "Yes," the supervisor replies, finally meeting his eyes for the first time, "but there has been a priority reassignment due to operational requirements." "Operational requirements," the man repeats quietly. No emotion in his tone, only recognition of how vague the phrase is. A few passengers behind him start watching more openly now. Something in the tone, in the spacing of people, in the way staff avoid direct explanation. It does not align with normal boarding behavior. But no one intervenes. Airports train people to assume authority is always justified. The white passenger disappears further down the jet bridge, already absorbed into the flow of priority boarding. The man at the counter remains where he is told to wait. The agent lowers her voice to the supervisor. "His seat was confirmed. I don't see any voluntary change request." The supervisor responds without looking at her. "Override came from above." Above is not explained. The man hears it anyway. He shifts his weight slightly, not impatient, just attentive now in a different way. As if he has moved from waiting to recording, mentally mapping everything being said, everything being avoided. The security officer takes one half step closer, not a threat, but not neutral either. "Sir," the supervisor says, softer now, controlled, "we are going to resolve this. Please remain cooperative." The man nods once. "I am cooperative," he replies. A pause follows, because there is nothing in his behavior that justifies escalation, and yet escalation is already forming around him. The gate agent looks between her screen and the supervisor again. Something does not align. She knows it, but she does not say it out loud. The man glances toward the boarding lane where the last of the priority passengers are disappearing into the aircraft, then back to the counter. "Who approved the change?" he asks. This time, no one answers quickly. The supervisor finally says, "We are verifying that internally." But his phone vibrates at that exact moment. He glances at it. Posture changes slightly. Not panic, adjustment, as if the situation has just become less flexible than he expected. The man notices that too. He does not argue, does not raise his voice, does not resist. He simply stands still, watching, waiting, absorbing every inconsistency like data points that do not yet form a conclusion. Around him, the boarding gate continues its rhythm. But near him, that rhythm has quietly broken, and no one is willing to say it out loud. Not yet. They chose the wrong person. They just didn't know it yet. The air near Gate 14 feels slightly different now, not because anything visible has changed, but because people are starting to notice patterns they were not meant to notice. The man is still standing where he was asked to wait, not moved, not seated, not escorted away, just held in place by procedure, a different kind of pressure. The supervisor returns from a short phone call. His expression is more controlled now, less uncertain. The kind of control that usually appears after receiving instructions that cannot be questioned in front of others. He gestures lightly toward the boarding lane. "Sir, we're going to move you forward shortly. There is a verification delay, but you will be accommodated." The phrase sounds like progress, but nothing moves. Behind them, the jet bridge door remains open, swallowing passengers one by one in steady intervals. The aircraft is already alive, boarding announcements faintly echoing from inside, cabin crew preparing for final seating checks. The white passenger from earlier is no longer visible, already inside, already settled, already no longer part of the problem. The gate agent avoids eye contact now. She keeps typing, then stopping, then rechecking the same screen as if repetition might produce a different result. It does not. The man watches her hands instead of her face. Small details matter more than explanations. A second supervisor arrives. This one carries a tablet, not paper. Younger, sharper posture. He does not introduce himself. He simply stands next to the first supervisor and looks at the screen. A short silence passes between them, not confusion, confirmation. The second supervisor speaks first. "We can't clear his boarding at this stage." The gate agent looks up immediately. "Why, his seat is—" She stops herself mid-sentence. Not because she is wrong, because she understands suddenly that being correct is no longer relevant. The first supervisor answers without turning toward her. System has flagged a priority override. By whom? She asks quietly, no answer. The man finally takes one step closer to the counter, not aggressive, not rushed, just closing distance enough to be heard without forcing volume. I am holding a confirmed business class seat on this flight, he says calmly. If there is an override, I need the authorization source. The second supervisor glances at him for the first time. It is a quick assessment, not of identity, but of risk. We are not discussing authorization at this stage, he replies. That sentence changes the atmosphere because it replaces explanation with control. A security officer now moves closer to the edge of the counter zone, not touching distance, but close enough to make physical presence part of the conversation. The man notices him again. He does not react. He only asks, "Am I being denied boarding?" The first supervisor answers carefully. "No, you are being temporarily held for verification." The word temporarily is doing a lot of work. Behind them, another announcement plays, final boarding call. The timing adds pressure, not loud pressure, system pressure. Passengers still waiting nearby begin to glance over more openly now. One woman shifts her bag strap, watching the interaction longer than she intends to. A man pretends not to look, then looks again. Something is not aligning with normal boarding flow. The second supervisor taps his tablet. A pause, then another tap. His expression tightens slightly. "Your record shows cleared status," he says finally. The gate agent exhales softly, almost inaudible. The first supervisor does not react to that information. Instead, he responds with something more rigid. Override supersedes clearance. The words are final in tone, even if they are not final in logic. The man's gaze stays steady. "Then show me the override documentation." A pause. This time, no one answers quickly enough, because documentation implies accountability, and accountability implies exposure. The security officer shifts his stance slightly again, still neutral in posture, but now clearly part of containment rather than assistance. The second supervisor lowers his voice. "Sir, we are working to resolve this internally. If you continue to delay, you may miss your flight." The irony is not lost on anyone, even if it is not spoken. He is being told he might miss the flight while being blocked from boarding it. The man looks toward the jet bridge again, then back to the counter. "I am not delaying anything," he says evenly. "I am asking for clarification." The first supervisor's phone vibrates again. He answers it immediately this time. Short call. No visible emotion during it, but when he ends the call, his expression changes in a subtle way, less flexible than before, more final. He looks at the gate agent. "Hold boarding until further notice." That sentence lands heavier than it should, because holding boarding is not a small decision. It affects schedules, aircraft timing, crew operations. The gate agent looks stunned for a brief moment. "Hold the entire flight boarding." "Yes," he confirms. Now people are definitely watching. Some passengers shift closer to see what is happening. Others stop pretending not to notice. The man remains still. But now the situation around him is no longer quiet. It is contained but unstable. The white passenger is already inside the aircraft, seated, unaware of what is building behind him. The man at the counter glances once toward the jet bridge door, then back at the supervisors. His voice lowers slightly, not in emotion, but in precision. "Then this is no longer a boarding issue," he says. No one responds, because something about the way he said it suggests he knows exactly what category it has become. And for the first time, the supervisors do not look fully certain they are the ones in control of that category anymore. The boarding area is no longer just a waiting space. It has become an audience. Passengers who were once indifferent now stand with subtle attention directed toward Gate 14. The tone of the staff, the repeated pauses, the sudden instruction to hold boarding, none of it fits the rhythm of a normal departure. The man remains at the counter, still calm, still upright, still not raising his voice. But now he is no longer just a passenger waiting for clarification. He is the center of a disruption no one is openly naming. A new voice cuts through the space. Is there a problem here? A senior airline operations manager has arrived. He walks with purpose, not urgency. The kind of authority that is used to resetting situations simply by entering them. The supervisors immediately straighten. The gate agent steps slightly back. The man does not move. The operations manager scans the scene in one slow pass. Counter, staff, security officer, boarding lane, then finally the man. His expression remains neutral, but his attention lingers a fraction longer than it should. Sir, he begins, addressing the man directly now, we are experiencing a procedural discrepancy with your boarding assignment. The phrase is carefully chosen, not error, not mistake, discrepancy, something that can exist without assigning blame. The man responds immediately, evenly. I was reassigned after confirmation. I am requesting the reason and authorization source. The manager nods slightly, as if acknowledging the request is valid, but not urgent. We are investigating that internally. The word internally is doing more work now than before, because it signals containment, not transparency. Behind them, a passenger coughs lightly. Another shifts weight from one foot to the other. The waiting has become uncomfortable in a way that is no longer about time. It is about visibility. The operations manager takes a step closer to the counter. He lowers his voice, but not enough to exclude others. Sir, at this point, you are causing a delay to the boarding process. We need your cooperation to resolve this quickly. The sentence reframes everything. Not, we are resolving an issue, but you are the issue affecting resolution, a subtle shift, a public one. The man absorbs it without reacting emotionally. Instead, he asks again, am I cleared for boarding? A pause follows. The operations manager does not answer immediately. That pause is noticed by everyone watching. Finally, at this moment, he says, your boarding is on hold pending verification. A few passengers glance at each other now, because verification has already been mentioned more than once, and still nothing has been verified in a way anyone can understand. The gate agent suddenly speaks, quietly but clearly enough to be heard. His record shows confirmed business class assignment. The operations manager turns his head slightly toward her, not sharply, but enough. Confirmed does not override system updates, he says. The words are final again. But now they are being heard differently by those listening, because system updates is becoming the invisible authority that no one can question without sounding unreasonable. The man takes a small breath, still controlled, still precise. I am not asking for override reversal, he says. I am asking for documentation of the override. The operations manager's gaze tightens slightly. That will be reviewed after departure procedures are stabilized. The irony becomes heavier in the silence that follows. Departure procedures are not stable. They are being held unstable because of him, or because of something attached to him that no one is willing to name. A security officer steps slightly closer now, not aggressive, but closer than before, a signal that the situation has crossed from administrative into controlled containment. Passengers notice this shift immediately. No one speaks loudly, but discomfort spreads quietly through posture, glances, stillness. The man looks toward the jet bridge again. Then back, and this time his calm feels different, not weaker, more focused. The operations manager speaks again, now slightly more firm. Sir, if you continue to challenge procedure at this stage, we may need to escalate compliance enforcement. That sentence lands differently than intended, because it implies escalation is still a choice. The man responds without raising his voice. You have already escalated. Silence, not dramatic silence. Operational silence. The kind that happens when everyone realizes the conversation is no longer following expected structure. The gate agent looks down at her screen again, then freezes. Something has changed. Her eyes shift quickly across the data, a detail she didn't see before or wasn't supposed to notice. Her expression tightens. She looks up at the operations manager. Sir, She begins carefully. There's a secondary flag on this passenger profile. The manager turns slightly. What kind of flag? She hesitates. Because now she is speaking something that does not match what she was told earlier. Compliance level access, she says quietly. Internal audit designation. That phrase changes the air instantly. The security officer stops adjusting his stance. The supervisors exchange a brief look. The operations manager does not respond immediately. For the first time, the structure around the man is not fully stable. Because internal audit is not a passenger category, it is oversight. And oversight means the system is no longer only looking outward, it is looking inward. The man does not react to the discovery, he simply watches them realize it, one by one. And for the first time since the interaction began, the authority around him is no longer speaking with certainty. It is speaking with caution. And caution in a system built on authority is the first sign of collapse. The gate is quieter now, but not calmer. It is the kind of quiet that happens when people stop behaving naturally and start behaving carefully. Every staff member at Gate 14 is aware they are no longer handling a simple boarding issue. Something has moved underneath it. Something they did not initiate. The operations manager stands slightly rigid now, tablet angled downward instead of actively used. The supervisors are no longer speaking unless spoken to. Even the security officer's posture has changed, less enforcement, more observation. The man remains at the counter, still the same position, still the same calm expression. But now no one treats his stillness as passive, it feels deliberate. A third figure enters the area, airline security liaison, followed by someone else in a darker blazer, airport authority badge visible but not announced. They do not introduce themselves immediately. They observe first. The first liaison speaks. We've been informed of an unresolved boarding restriction involving a flagged passenger. The wording is precise. Not denial, not error, restriction. The operations manager steps forward slightly. We are currently verifying a system override related to seat reassignment, he explains. The liaison looks at him, then at the man. Who initiated the override? Silence follows. A different kind of silence than before, because now the question is no longer operational. It is procedural accountability, and nobody wants to own it out loud. The second official finally speaks. We need to confirm the chain of authorization. The gate agent quietly slides a printed sheet toward them. Her hand is slightly tense. On it, passenger manifest, seating allocation logs, timestamp entries. The liaison scans it quickly, then pauses. His eyes stop on one line. A longer pause this time. He looks up. This override was not initiated through standard airline dispatch channels. No one responds immediately. The operations manager shifts his weight slightly. That is what we are investigating, he says. The liaison does not look satisfied. The man finally speaks again. His voice remains steady. Am I cleared to board this flight? The question is simple, but it forces structure because everything they are doing is avoiding answering exactly that. The liaison looks at him more directly now, not as a passenger, as a subject of classification. Your boarding status is currently under compliance review, he says. A few passengers in the background hear that clearly now. Compliance review, not delay, not adjustment. Review. The white passenger who boarded earlier is not visible, but his presence is now part of the situation without being in it, because the system is now questioning the conditions that allowed him through. The operations manager receives a notification on his device. His expression tightens immediately. He steps slightly aside, reading, then freezes for half a second longer than professional behavior allows. The liaison notices. What is it? He asks. The manager hesitates, then responds carefully. Internal audit escalation has been triggered. The words are said quietly, but they travel because escalation means the system is no longer locally controlled. The liaison looks down at his own device now. A notification arrives, then another. His expression changes subtly, not shock, correction. Understanding, he looks back at the man. Your identification matches an active oversight designation, he says slowly. That sentence shifts everything again, the supervisors visibly tense. The gate agent looks down as if confirming something she did not fully understand when she first saw it. The man does not react outwardly. But now, for the first time, the room is no longer acting like it is managing him. It is adjusting around him. The liaison turns slightly toward the operations manager. Why was this passenger redirected? The manager answers, carefully choosing words. We received a priority override instruction through internal routing. From whom? A pause, long enough that everyone hears it. We are attempting to trace that now. The liaison exhales lightly through his nose, controlled frustration, not anger. This is not a boarding discrepancy anymore, he says. No one disagrees, because they cannot define it cleanly now. The man watches them all, not with satisfaction, not with emotion, with observation, as if confirming how long it takes for systems to correct themselves once they have already made a mistake. The liaison steps closer to the counter. Hold boarding is to continue until compliance confirms authorization chain integrity, he states. That sentence now reverses everything, because holding boarding is no longer about him. It is about the system. A ripple moves through the gate. Passengers are no longer just watching. They are waiting for resolution, not entertainment. Resolution. The operations manager finally looks at the man directly. For the first time, there is no assumption in his expression, only uncertainty. Sir, he says carefully, we may need you to remain here while we complete verification. The man nods once, not resistance, not approval, acknowledgement. I will remain, he replies. That simplicity shifts the tone again, because he is not fighting the system. He is allowing it to expose itself. And now, for the first time, the authority in the room is no longer driving the situation forward. It is catching up to something it already failed to control. The instruction arrives without emotion, just procedure. Sir, please come with us for temporary separation while verification continues. The liaison says it, but it is the operations manager who enforces it with a gesture, small, controlled, practiced. Not detention, not removal, separation. A word designed to sound temporary even when it is not defined. The man does not resist. He simply looks once toward the jet bridge. The aircraft door is still open. Passengers are still boarding, but slower now, uneven, disrupted. Crew members are no longer moving with full confidence in timing. Something has been interrupted, and everyone knows it. He turns back and follows, not escorted tightly, not forced, guided. That distinction matters in how people perceive authority. He is moved away from Gate 14 through a side corridor near the operations desk. Glass walls partially separate him from the boarding area. From here, he can still see the gate. But now he is outside its flow, inside a controlled space. A small holding office is prepared quickly, not because it was planned, but because airports always have contingency rooms that rarely get used. The door closes softly behind him, not locked, but closed. The liaison remains outside the room. The operations manager stands near the glass partition, speaking quietly into a headset. The supervisors are no longer central. They are observers now, repositioned by hierarchy. Inside the room, the man sits. No urgency in movement, no pacing, just stillness. On the wall, a monitor shows partial flight status updates. Delayed, then updated again, then delayed again. The system is reacting to something it cannot stabilize. Outside, voices are lower now, not calm, controlled. Inside the holding room, the man looks at nothing in particular. He is not reacting to isolation. He is observing the structure of it. The door opens briefly. A junior staff member enters with water. He places it on the table without speaking. He leaves quickly. No eye contact. That avoidance is noticed, not emotionally, structurally. A few minutes pass. Then the liaison enters alone. This time he closes the door fully. He does not sit. He stands. Your profile has been verified, he says. The man looks up. No change in expression. And The liaison pauses, because the answer is not simple enough for the system that was built to avoid complexity. There is an active compliance designation linked to your identity, he continues carefully. Internal Oversight Authority. The words land in the room without reaction from the man. But outside the room, the situation is shifting, because now staff are no longer just managing a passenger. They are managing a classification they did not expect to encounter at a gate level. The liaison continues. The override that removed you from your assigned seat did not originate from authorized airline dispatch. The man nods once, not surprised, not pleased, acknowledging confirmation. The liaison studies him now more directly. Can you confirm whether you initiated any external compliance access request prior to boarding? A quiet question. Important, operational. The man answers simply. No, silence follows, because that removes one possible explanation and leaves only internal causation. The liaison exhales slightly, then speaks again. Until this is resolved, boarding will remain paused. The man responds calmly. Then resolve it. No tone, no pressure, just instruction without authority. The liaison hesitates for a fraction of a second, because the way he said it does not sound like a request. It sounds like confirmation of process expectation. Outside the room, the operations manager is now in a call that is no longer local. His posture is different, less controlled, more attentive. He lowers his voice further. Yes, I understand we are holding the flight pending verification. A pause, then a sharper expression. No, the passenger has not been cleared through standard channels because the override bypassed dispatch. He listens again. Then his face tightens. A longer silence follows. When he finally speaks again, it is slower. Understood. We are initiating full internal audit protocol. Inside the room, the man remains seated. Still, patient, not passive, present. The liaison looks at him for a moment longer, then says something carefully measured. If your designation is confirmed at oversight level, this incident will be escalated beyond airport authority. The man replies without hesitation. That is already happening. A pause, because he is not guessing. He is confirming what they are only now realizing. Outside, the system continues to shift. Boarding remains frozen. Passengers are still present but no longer progressing. Crew are waiting for instructions that are no longer coming from a single source. Inside the room, the liaison steps back slightly. For the first time, the authority dynamic is not centered on control. It is centered on verification, and verification is slower than power. The man looks toward the glass wall, not at the liaison, not at the room, at the system beyond it. And for the first time, the structure around him feels less like containment and more like exposure. The holding room is quiet in a different way now, not peaceful, processed. The kind of silence that follows when decisions are no longer being made locally, but somewhere further up the chain where no one in the room can see. The man sits in the same chair, hands relaxed, posture unchanged. But the environment around him is no longer stable in the way it was 20 minutes ago. Outside the glass partition, movement is more fragmented. Staff no longer walk with certainty. They pause before speaking. They check devices twice. They stop mid-step when receiving messages. Something has entered the system that is correcting itself in real time. The liaison is gone. The operations manager remains outside, now speaking with 2 additional airport officials who arrived quietly without announcement. Their tone is lower than before, more technical, less confident. Inside the room, the door opens again. This time it is not courtesy, it is necessity. The gate agent enters first, followed by a junior operations staff member carrying a tablet. She looks tense, not scared, but aware that what she is about to say cannot be unsaid. She places the tablet on the table in front of the man. No request from you is needed, she says quietly. We found the routing log. The man does not touch the device. He simply looks at it. The screen shows system entries. Timestamps, access points, override sequence markers. The gate agent continues, voice controlled but strained. The seat reassignment was triggered through internal administrative override, she says. But it was not issued from airline dispatch or airport control. She hesitates, then adds the critical detail. It came through a restricted compliance relay channel. Silence follows, not because no one understands, because everyone now understands too clearly. The junior staff member speaks next, almost involuntarily. There's a second layer authorization embedded in the override chain, but it doesn't match any active passenger adjustment protocol. The man finally looks at the screen more closely, still not touching it, just reading. The gate agent lowers her voice further. We think someone used an internal compliance pathway to force seat reassignment after confirmation. That sentence shifts everything, because it removes randomness and introduces intent. The man speaks for the first time in several minutes. Who initiated it? No hesitation, no emotion, just structure. The staff exchange a look, not because they don't know, but because they do not have permission to state it yet. The junior staff member finally answers. We are still tracing the originating identity, she says, but her tone contradicts her words because they are not fully still tracing it. They are confirming it. The gate agent glances at the door, then back at the man. Her voice drops even further. There's something else, she says. That phrase changes the room, because something else means escalation beyond procedure. She taps the tablet. A second log appears. This shows manual access after the override, she continues. Someone attempted to suppress audit visibility. The man's expression remains unchanged. But now the structure around him is no longer just faulty. It is manipulated. The junior staff member adds quickly, almost defensively. It wasn't fully successful. The audit system retained partial visibility, a small but critical failure in whoever tried to hide it. The man finally leans forward slightly, not emotionally, practically. He studies the data, then asks, was passenger prioritization affected by this override? The gate agent hesitates, then nods once. Yes. That single word carries more weight than anything said earlier, because it confirms the visible outcome was not accidental, it was directed. The man leans back again, still calm. But now the silence he holds is different. It is no longer observation of confusion. It is observation of confirmation. Outside the room, voices rise slightly, not loud, but sharper. The operations manager is now speaking with airport compliance leadership through a secured channel. His tone is controlled but no longer confident. Yes. We are confirming unauthorized internal routing access. Yes, it impacted active boarding assignment. A pause, then his posture stiffens slightly. No, we did not initiate it locally. Inside the room, the gate agent notices something on the tablet again. Her expression tightens. There's a timestamp overlap, she says quickly. The override was issued moments after boarding confirmation was finalized. The junior staff member looks at her. That's not standard behavior, he replies. No, she agrees quietly. Now it is no longer a misunderstanding. It is interference during a completed process. The man finally speaks again, still calm, still measured. And the passenger who was moved ahead, silence returns, longer this time, because that name is not part of what they are ready to address yet. The gate agent answers carefully. He was assigned priority boarding after the override took effect. The implication sits in the air without needing to be completed. The system did not just displace one passenger. It restructured priority access based on an unauthorized action. Outside, the airport flow is still frozen, but not visibly chaotic, internally unstable, the kind of instability that does not show itself to passengers until it is too late. The man looks at the tablet one last time, then gently pushes it back. He does not reject it. He does not accept it. He simply returns it to the system it came from. The gate agent takes it back quickly, almost reflexively. The room falls quiet again. But now the silence is different, because nothing in it is unknown anymore, only unacknowledged. And somewhere beyond the glass, the system is beginning to correct itself, not through explanation, but through consequence. The airport is still functioning. That is what makes it worse. Flights continue to land. Announcements still play. Staff still move between counters. But at Gate 14, everything has slowed into a controlled freeze that does not officially exist in the airport schedule. It is not labeled as a disruption. It is labeled as verification hold. Inside operations control, multiple screens now display the same status line. Boarding paused, compliance review active. The man remains in the holding room, still seated, still quiet, still unchanged. But now what surrounds him is no longer just a gate-level issue. It is a cascading internal. Outside the room, the operations manager is no longer speaking casually. He is standing, headset on, voice measured but increasingly precise. Yes, I understand the escalation threshold. No, we did not anticipate compliance-level access interference at boarding stage. A pause. His eyes flick toward the holding room glass, then away. We are providing full access to logs now. Inside the room, the gate agent returns briefly with updated system prints. Her movements are faster now, less composed. Not panic, compression, like time is shortening. She places the papers down and speaks quickly. They're pulling audit records from Central Airline Systems, she says, not just airport control. The junior staff member follows. There are cross-checks happening with identity verification servers. That sentence changes the scale because now it is no longer about a seat. It is about identity validation infrastructure. The man listens without interruption, not reacting to the expansion, only registering it. Outside, another voice joins the operations channel, this one calmer, more distant. Senior Compliance Authority. The operations manager straightens slightly as he listens. Yes, he says, we are confirming unauthorized override path. Yes, we have preserved all local logs. A pause. His expression tightens. No, the passenger has not initiated any disruptive action. Inside the room, the gate agent looks at the man for a fraction longer than before. That detail matters now because disruptive action has been part of the assumption since the beginning, and it is being explicitly removed. The junior staff member scrolls through data on the tablet, then stops. Something's emerging, he says quietly. The gate agent leans closer. What? He hesitates, then shows her. A hidden sequence of access requests layered into the override chain, not visible at first glance, only after audit reconstruction. The gate agent exhales softly. This wasn't a simple seat change, she says. The man finally speaks. What was it? No emotion, just direction. The junior staff member answers carefully. It was a forced reallocation executed through compliance-level routing, but it intersected with an active passenger priority lock. That sentence is technical, but its meaning is clear. The system was forced to override itself. The gate agent looks up, and it selected him. No one corrects her wording because it is accurate. Outside the room, the operations manager receives another update. His posture shifts again, this time more sharply. He lowers his voice into the headset. Yes, I see the anomaly report. Yes, we are confirming that override bypassed normal dispatch authentication. A pause. Then his expression changes, not shock, recognition. Inside the room, the man remains still. But now the system is no longer treating him as a single passenger. It is treating him as a trigger point. The operations manager removes his headset briefly and speaks to the liaison beside him. This is not an isolated incident, he says quietly. The liaison looks at him. What do you mean? The manager hesitates, then responds. The override originated from a pathway that intersects with compliance audit authority. That line changes the atmosphere outside the room completely, because it implies the system did not just fail. It was accessed through authority-grade channels. Inside the room, the gate agent receives another notification. Her eyes widen slightly. She shows it to the junior staff member. He reads it twice, then looks up. They're initiating full chain of command tracing, he says. The man watches them, not asking, just observing confirmation of inevitability. Outside, the airport authority liaison returns briefly to the glass. His tone is lower now, more careful. Boarding remains suspended until full verification is complete, he says. A pause. then adds almost reluctantly, and until responsibility for override initiation is identified. That is the first time the word responsibility is used. Not error, not system glitch, responsibility. Inside the room, the man nods once. Not acknowledgement of guilt, acknowledgement of direction. Outside, staff no longer speak casually. Every sentence is now measured against potential audit exposure. The system is no longer managing a passenger. It is managing its own contradiction. And the more it tries to stabilize, the more it reveals where it failed. The airport does not announce the shift. It happens in layers, quiet updates on screens, revised status lines, shortened radio calls, staff suddenly changing tone mid-sentence. At gate 14, the words "compliance review active" remain on the monitor. But now something new appears beneath it, not visible to passengers. Visible only to staff systems. Chain trace initiated, override origin mapping in progress inside the holding room. The man remains seated. Same posture, same calm expression. But the room no longer feels like containment. It feels like observation from both sides. Outside, the operations manager stands with the airport authority liaison and a senior compliance officer who has just joined remotely through a secure screen feed. No introductions now, only status updates. The liaison speaks first. "We have isolated the override sequence to an internal compliance relay pathway," he says. The compliance officer responds immediately. "Which node initiated it?" A pause. The operations manager looks at his tablet, then answers carefully. "The relay was accessed through a restricted administrative layer." That is not an answer. It is a direction. The compliance officer does not accept it. "Restricted does not mean anonymous," he says. Silence follows. Inside the holding room, the gate agent watches the tablet again, then freezes. "There's a correction update," she says quickly. The junior staff member looks over. "What kind?" Her voice lowers. "The system is retracting the initial assumption that the override was operationally justified." That sentence changes everything, because until now the system was still treating the override as possibly legitimate. Now it is not. It is being reclassified. The man listens without reacting. Outside, the compliance officer continues. "Was any authorized dispatch authority involved?" The operations manager hesitates. "No confirmed dispatch authorization has been identified." That is the key failure. No authorization, only access. The liaison shifts slightly. "This means the override was executed outside approved operational governance." No one disputes it, because logs now confirm it. Inside the room, the gate agent receives another update. She reads it, then looks up. "They're flagging all actions taken after the override as potentially invalid," she says. The junior staff member reacts immediately. "That includes the seat reassignment confirmation for the other passenger." A silence follows. He has said it directly now, not implied, not suggested. Confirmed impact. The white passenger seated on the aircraft is now part of a pending system correction. Outside, the operations manager receives a new directive. His expression changes noticeably. He steps slightly away from the group before speaking. "Yes, understood. We are preparing correction protocol." A pause. Then he looks toward the holding room again. "No, the passenger has not been engaged beyond standard separation procedure." Inside the room, the man remains still. But now everything being said around him is no longer about his behavior. It is about the system's behavior around him. The compliance officer's voice sharpens slightly. "Begin correction notice issuance," he says. The liaison responds. "Already in progress." Inside the system, something formal is being generated, not punishment, not blame, correction. Outside the room, staff begin receiving synchronized alerts, each screen showing the same header: correction notice, boarding override invalidated pending final review. The gate agent exhales quietly, not relief, realization. The junior staff member scrolls through updated logs, then pauses. "There's a reversal trigger being prepared," he says. Gate agent looks at him. What does that mean? He hesitates, then answers. It means the system is preparing to undo all actions taken after the override. Silence, not dramatic silence, structural silence, because undoing actions at this stage affects boarding status, seating allocation, and operational timing already in motion. Inside the room, the man finally speaks. Is boarding resumed after correction? No emotion, just procedural clarity. The liaison hesitates before answering. That will depend on final validation of override source accountability. The man nods once. Outside, the compliance officer continues. Once correction is executed, all affected passenger allocations must be restored to pre-override state unless otherwise validated. That is the first explicit acknowledgement of reversal, not emotional, systemic. The operations manager looks increasingly tense now, because restoring pre-override state does not only affect one passenger. It exposes every action taken to correct him, including those who enforced it. Inside the room, the gate agent watches the man again. Something about his stillness now feels different, not passive, settled, as if nothing surprising is left in the system for him anymore. The junior staff member receives another update. His eyes widen slightly. They've identified the access origin cluster, he says. The liaison immediately turns. Confirmed? The junior staff member nods. Yes. It originated from an internal compliance-linked administrative channel. A pause. Then he adds the final detail carefully. And it was executed during active boarding confirmation lock. Outside the room, the compliance officer's tone becomes final. Then issue full correction and initiate responsibility audit. That sentence ends the phase, because now the system is no longer investigating what happened. It is determining who allowed it to happen. Inside the room, the man remains silent. But outside it, the structure that tried to quietly move him aside is now beginning to move in the opposite direction. The airport is still operational, but nothing at Gate 14 behaves like normal operations anymore. The correction notice has spread through internal systems faster than announcements can follow. Staff terminals update in staggered timing, some already showing restored seating maps, others still frozen on compliance review active. It creates a visible contradiction in motion. People walking in one direction, systems moving in another. Inside the holding room, the man remains seated. No change in posture, no visible anticipation, only presence. Outside, the operations manager stands slightly apart from the others now. The liaison and compliance officer are both focused on live audit feeds projected onto a secured screen. Lines of data scroll continuously. No one speaks for several seconds. Then the compliance officer breaks it. Correction execution confirmed. A pause, pre-override configuration restored. That sentence does not sound dramatic, but it ends something, because now the system has officially accepted that what was done earlier should not have happened. Inside the room, the gate agent receives a synchronized update. She reads it twice, then exhales slowly. It's reverted, she says. The junior staff member confirms. All seat allocations have been restored to original manifest state. A silence follows, not relief, settlement. Outside, the liaison looks toward the operations manager. And responsibility trace? He asks. The manager hesitates before answering. Still active, audit is identifying access point attribution. The compliance officer nods once. That means accountability is now internal. Inside the room, the man finally stands, not rushed, not reactive, just a natural transition from waiting to completion. The door opens immediately, not because someone tells him to leave, but because there is no longer procedural reason for him to remain inside. The liaison is the one who speaks first. Your boarding status has been fully restored. No apology, no elaboration, just confirmation. The man nods once. That was expected, he says, not arrogance, not emotion, recognition of process outcome. The operations manager looks slightly different now, not defeated, but aware, because the system did not collapse. It corrected itself and recorded everything. The gate agent steps forward slightly. "Your original seat is now available," she says quietly. The man responds simply. "Thank you." No emphasis, no weight, just closure. Outside, the compliance officer receives a final update. His expression changes subtly. "Access trail confirmed," he says. The liaison looks at him. "Source," the compliance officer pauses, then answers. "Internal administrative compliance channel, privileged access layer." A longer pause, then the final line. "It bypassed standard dispatch authorization." No one speaks after that immediately, because that sentence identifies the failure without naming emotion. Inside the room, the man begins walking toward the jet bridge. No escort now, no containment, no delay, just movement rejoining process. Passengers outside the gate are boarding again, slower than before, but resumed. Some notice the shift in energy, others do not. The white passenger who boarded earlier remains on the aircraft, unaware of the correction that just rewrote the logic behind his priority access. The man approaches the gate. The staff do not stop him. No one speaks loudly, not because they are told not to, but because nothing requires enforcement anymore. As he steps onto the jet bridge, the operations manager speaks quietly behind him, not as authority, as acknowledgement. "This will be reported internally," he says. The man does not turn. He answers while walking. "It already is." No threat, no warning, just confirmation that systems remember. The aircraft door is ahead now, open, stable again, restored to schedule. Behind him, the airport returns to motion, but not the same motion it had before. Something has been recorded into it, not visible, not announced, but permanent in structure. And in quiet consequence, authority no longer feels like certainty. It feels like accountability delayed just long enough to reveal itself. The cabin is calm again, but not fully reset. Passengers are seated. Overhead bins are closed. Flight attendants move with practiced precision, though their timing carries a slight residue of earlier disruption, small pauses, brief glances at updated manifests. The man is already seated in his original assigned seat, restored. No announcement explains it. No apology accompanies it. Only the quiet reality that everything was corrected without being publicly acknowledged. The white passenger sits several rows ahead, still unaware of the system reversal that revalidated every allocation behind him. The aircraft doors close. A soft, final sound, not dramatic, administrative. Outside the window, ground operations continue as if nothing unusual happened. But inside the aircraft, those who paid attention earlier remember something they cannot fully name. A delay that did not behave like a delay, an escalation that never turned into confrontation, a resolution that arrived without performance. The cabin crew completes final checks. A brief exchange at the front of the cabin catches attention, low voices, clipped sentences. One crew member reviews a tablet twice, then stops. A subtle change in expression, not alarm, understanding. The aircraft pushes back, slow movement, controlled departure. The man looks out the window, no tension in his face. No satisfaction either, only completion. The plane taxis toward the runway. The cabin lights dim slightly. Normal procedure resumes, but behind that normality, something remains unchanged. The awareness that authority in the airport was not what it appeared to be at the beginning of this journey. It was a system capable of correction, but only after exposure. Inside the airline operations center, hours later, reports are being finalized, not public statements, internal documentation. The language is precise, stripped of emotion. Unauthorized compliance-level access identified boarding override invalidated seat allocation restored to original manifest internal audit initiated for access pathway breach. No mention of humiliation. No mention of confrontation. Only structure. Only consequence. Only record. Back on the aircraft, the flight levels out. The cabin settles into normal flight rhythm. Some passengers sleep, others return to screens. The earlier disruption becomes something people will describe differently later, never fully accurately, always slightly simplified. At the window seat, the man remains still. No phone activity, no conversation, no visible reaction to what has already been resolved behind him. A flight attendant briefly passes by. She pauses for a fraction of a second, then continues, no questions asked, no attention drawn. Because everything that needed attention was already processed by a system that does not operate in public view. The plane continues forward, steady, uninterrupted now, as if nothing had happened. But systems do not forget easily. And somewhere beneath the routine flight log, an entry remains permanently marked, not as disruption, but as correction.